did you know I was here?
Wouldn't you like to know?
Yes, that's why I asked.
Well, Buffrog, hey, I don't have to tell you anything.
Finally, I can cross this guy off the list. Hi, I'm Kitty Monk, and I'm here to talk to you about Star versus the Forces of Evil, or more specifically, Ludo Avarius, and to a lesser extent, his brother, Dennis.
Not Dennis.
No, it's Ludo.
Ludo?
And kinda like I did with Meteora, Ludo's arc throughout the series is huge, probably way bigger than hers. Honestly, this is my longest script to date at 106 pages. Which means, you know the drill, we divide it up into 3 eras. The Wand era, which will cover him until season 2, the Alone era, which will cover him until the end of Battle for Muni, and the Dennis era, which will cover him until the end of the show. And I don't think I'm breaking any barriers here when I mention that, besides Eclipsa, Ludo is probably the best written character in the show. And he's also probably the most tragic. Wait, what about Meteora? Well, let's discuss. At the start of the show, Ludo is Star's archenemy, and he's kinda like most Disney Channel villains from that era. Think Lord Hater, Doofenshmirtz, heck, I'll even add Bill Cipher to the list, where he's loud, obnoxious, yet somehow adorkable and hilarious at the same time.
Unguarded.
Excellent work, Buffrog!
And he's also kinda like Peridot, where he starts off super silly and then he becomes, like, a good guy, kind of. And because he has that level of charm to him, and you can tell the voice actor probably loves playing him, you kind of want him to succeed and also don't at the same time. Ludo is the main antagonist of season 1, before Toffee, and his main goal is to steal Star's wand, which I think we all know by now what the wand does and why it's so important. Ludo wants the wand for one reason and one reason only: domination of the enemy!
Soon, the wand will be mine, and then the universe, and then... Actually, the universe should do it.
Really? You're not, like, gonna do anything after? Like, aren't you gonna go out and celebrate your victory? You're just gonna take over the universe? That sounds kinda boring, really, not gonna lie, dude. Kitty, how much Star Versus did you watch recently? Well, except for Down by the River, because it's my favorite episode, and Puddle Defender for similar reasons, and honestly, for Down by the River, I've never related to Moon more or less. Well, nothing that I didn't screen record. Honestly, I mostly just rely on transcripts from the wiki, so thank you, wiki. Just watch the clip where Ludo has his crazy wand fantasies. Okay, fine, Catherine, I guess this is your channel now. Roll the clip.
It'll match my hat, and I'll get my big boy body. Kick down the tower, zip, zap, zip, 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 zap, and I'm a lifeguard.
This is actually pretty important. I might be jumping the gun, but yeah, this foreshadows the real reason Ludo wants the wand. Because outside of his daddy's love, he'll get the one thing he never got before: love and respect. Since he thinks if he takes over, people will have to respect him, and if he uses magic, he can enhance himself, like Ren with his pectoral implants, and look better. Perhaps he resents the fact he's shorter than most human, or most magical creatures, which might be a big deal down the line. Perhaps he has self-worth issues. Think of it like Plankton if they treated him trying to steal the Krabby Patty formula as super tragic, outside of that one episode where we learn he and Mr. Krabs used to be friends. I don't know, it's a mixed bag, but I do love when shows undergo Cerebus syndrome, so let's slow burn this baby. Hopefully not like the baby from the road, though slow burn nonetheless. Of course, Ludo isn't alone in this endeavor. He has a bunch of minions at his disposal, most notably Buffrog, who acts as his scout and second in command. And he's not like Starscream, he really believes in this mission, so he's kind of more like Shockwave. And a bunch of others who mostly just serve to pad out his army. He typically strikes whenever Star is alone or distracted.
See you morons! This is what happens when you don't work out! Your muscles are like pudding! Come on, back in the portal, back in the portal!
Wow, he's better than Starscream. Of course, Ludo always fails in this endeavor, since Star and Marco always manage to stop him or something happens last minute. But much like Plankton, he'll take it easy when he's dead, and he's shaking hands with Father Time and Neptune.
That's a particularly stupid plan, Ludo.
It's a great plan! Shut up! Oh, just Just get her!
What I find interesting is, yeah, Ludo wants the wand because he wants respect and admiration, but when you really think about it, he kind of has it in a way. He has a bunch of loyal minions who follow his every command, he has a cool castle to live in, but unfortunately, he doesn't realize it, so he tends to disrespect them all, never really repays them except for potentially giving them free room and board, which I don't even think he does that much. And really, he doesn't do all this in a, I know I act like a jerk, but deep down I actually really do care for you guys, but I can't express it kind of way. He frequently takes his own failures as a leader out on them. Well, if you think it's so easy, you do it. Like, I think the only time he's actually nice to somebody outside of, oh, good job, Buff Frog, is Brittany Wong.
Star's the worst.
I know, right?
I hope you destroy her.
Thank you, that is so nice.
So, honestly, well, let's keep watching. Of course, these many failures pile up, and they start to get to Ludo, who decides to hire somebody else to, quote,
I need someone who can wrangle you imbeciles. Oh, go get change!
So basically you're hiring a babysitter or an au pair. Ooh, maybe they could come from Earth. Imagine that, Ludo. That would be a cool episode and a good way to get the wand from Star. Of course, Ludo only interviews monsters because of course he does. It actually does make sense. And Ludo is a pretty rough, oh my god, what do you call it? I hate when I write scripts. I feel like Miss Heinous. Interviewer, yeah, that's it.
How am I under pressure?
Awesome! Is that so?
Yeah. What? Did you hear otherwise? I can't take it anymore! Ah!
Well, I know that totally isn't me, totally. Also,
These idiots are even dumber than you idiots!
I have questions about this. Is this like another random member of his species? Since BTW, Ludo is a kappa, a real species of water creatures from Japanese folklore, and we also later meet his family, all of whom are kappas. So I wonder if that was like one of his sisters, and that's why he rejected her, especially considering what we later learn about his family in season 2 and how he's the black sheep. Like, ugh, I'm not just hiring you because you're my sister. Or if it was just like a sign that Ludo isn't gonna pull a Mickey and Minnie Mouse and hire somebody who looks just like him. Eventually, he gets to a certain dashing candidate.
West Munion Swamp Water. Or do you drink from the bottle?
Christ on a stick, Ludo, it's the Bay Harbor Butcher. I know this sexy sight of lizard lamb looks hot, but you will show up to work tomorrow and the entire office will be covered in plastic wrap. Be wary. Of course, Toffee is able to charm his way into Ludo's inner circle by acting intelligent, while also talking down to him, and Ludo is too blinded by Toffee being sexy to notice.
Where did you come from?
I let myself in.
When?
After you hired me.
I hired you?
I accept.
Excellent!
I should steal Toffee's strategies when I have to go find a job. Like that'll ever happen.
Did anybody catch his name? Toffee. I guess his name is Toffee.
No, I'm pretty sure his real name is Jim Lindsay, and if you got that reference, high five. But I wish they followed up on Ludo having a schoolyard boy crush on Toffee, especially considering, like, how later on he has a bunch of intimacy problems and attachment issues. Ugh, not me and my shipping brain working its magic. I mean, it's totally not one of the few pairings in the show I ship outside of Tom Star, but that's just me and my silly little brain. Toffee says they can use Star's newfound love of fortune cookies to steal the wand, since Star does whatever the cookies say.
Maybe we can do something with those fortune cookies.
Oh god, I hope she doesn't get Jerry's fortune cookie. This time, they're going to write a fake fortune telling her to hug everything in sight. That way they can just grab the wand. But something screws it up. Ludo and his love-starved monsters.
Yes! Yes! Yes!
Back off, dude. I've been waiting for this since middle school.
What? You idiot!
Honestly, considering the eventual reveal with the monsters, I think this is excellent foreshadowing. Like, they're not trying to steal the wand for Ludo or because they believe in his cause, they just really have nowhere to go. Or they think he has the best chance of success no matter how many times they fail. Plus, at one point, he is pretty close to getting the wand, but he gets held back by Toffee.
There's the wand! I can totally grab it!
Patience.
Who, you might argue it's because he's only doing this because something extreme might happen, but I think it's because he knew Ludo would have actually succeeded in such a case. And at this point in time, it's the last thing he wants. Also, I think it was also calculated to help sow some dissension among the ranks, and make the henchmen start to consider, oh wait a minute, Ludo is actually kind of a bad leader when you get right down to it. Why are we following him? Putting our lives on the line for him. He doesn't even repay us. Ludo is of course defeated, but he does celebrate with Toffee since it was the closest they've ever come to getting the wand, and because of that, he doesn't think too critically of the fact that Toffee was the one who prevented them from getting the wand, or that Buffrog, aka his most trusted soldier, doesn't trust Toffee one bit.
What?
You sure you trust him, boss?
Of course!
Good on Buffrog. I trust nobody either. Not even myself. Them. But anyways, Toffee continues to further isolate Ludo from his allies. That way, he can betray him. Munipendence Day is perhaps the most pivotal episode of Season 1 outside of Muberty, since it turns the whole show on its head. And it's the first to establish the fact that the monsters are victims of oppression, and Star wants to be better than her predecessors by actually doing something about it. Thanks to Toffee, Ludo has started spying on Star with technology, which means no more Buffrog. Aw, poor Buffrog. He lost his job to AI, like 10 years too early.
Now that you don't have any spy stuff to do, you should get us some popcorn and milkshakes. I'm pretty sure we're gonna binge watch this Betty all night.
Is that really wise, Ludo? I mean, all knowledge is good knowledge, but spying leads to crying. After all...
Now we can watch Star wherever she goes. In the kitchen, bedroom, even in the bathroom.
Sir.
Maybe we don't keep the bathroom channel.
Yeah, see what I mean? But this episode is also important for another reason. Buffrog gets fired. As Buffrog points out, the all-seeing eye isn't really all that foolproof.
This eye only has one eye. My face has two. That's twice the number of the eyes.
Not to mention it only works because Star is super naive. And so far, Buffrog hasn't gotten caught. Whereas the all-seeing eye, like people are literally like, Star, what the hell is that? And she's like, oh yeah, I don't know and I don't care. Heck, I'll even argue they could use both of them. Buffrog could spy outside or perhaps on Marco, and then they can use the all-seeing eye on Star or vice versa. And then wait for a time when Star is alone for them to strike. Hopefully not when she's in the bathroom, but still. Instead, Ludo just keeps cozying up to Toffee and ignores Buffrog.
Sometimes your biggest threat is right under your nose.
My nose is in my beak.
Ew, how does it work like when you get a cold or a nosebleed? Oh crap, why did I ask? Those horrible implications. Like, do you have to stick a tampon up in there? Realizing he isn't getting anywhere with Ludo, Buffrog tries to go to the other monsters, who are a bit more willing to listen, but not by much.
Toffee will replace you with the electronic ice cream cone, and you with another electronic ice cream cone, and you with... What is it you do exactly?
He has a point, guys. Have you ever been to McDonald's? That machine breaks like crazy. Why does it do that? Tell me down below. Seriously, actually, I'm kind of curious. Besides, I kind of like to eat ice cream and then eat the cones after, like after I eat the top part of the ice cream, so this disturbs me deeply and my gluttonous behind. This time, Toffee decides to use an electric portal thing to get the wand, which according to the wiki is called a mace. I don't know, I was just reading the transcript. And of course, the task falls to Buffrog to go get the wand. Buffrog wants to do it in order to prove himself, and because I like to argue the monsters do heavily respect Buffrog a lot more than Ludo or even Toffee, even if they are cowards about it.
I will go.
I thought you might, you fat bag of garbage.
Buffrog tries to use the portal thing, but it doesn't work, since, you know, Toffee sabotaged him, Avi. And this destroys his standing in Ludo's eyes because for once Buffrog failed.
I'm telling you, this thing, it didn't work!
And I think this is also pretty important. Again, like Buffrog says, it was a genuine accident, and it was sabotaged. Either or isn't Buffrog's fault, really. And Ludo has known him presumably long enough to know or tell when he's telling the truth. But Ludo can only think about it in terms of how this affects Ludo. Not that they can try again after all, just that this is negatively affecting him because he supposedly gave Buffrog everything. Oh my god, did I call him Buttfrog?
I rescued you from a life in the swamp. I took you in. I gave you pants. And this is what you do to repay. Wait a minute. Where are your pants?
Wow, dude, glad I don't work for you. Strangely, I do like the fact that Ludo was going to punish Buffrog, but in a super minor way. You know, by taking away his milkshake privileges.
You've brought shame on this house. Now go to your room.
Oh no, how terrible. Milkshake privileges. Heck, he's even torn up about doing it. He doesn't even consider getting rid of Buffrog until Toffee brings it up.
I don't know what to do about that one. I mean, should I take away his milkshake privileges?
Which I think it's because compared to his other minions, yeah, Buffrog really hasn't screwed up before. So it's kind of like, why fire him for one failure? It's more like just go to your room and then tomorrow you're not grounded. After all, they fail all the time. Buffrog doesn't. But Toffee wins out because he has that buttery, smooth Bay Harbor butcher voice.
I think you know what you have to do.
Well, that was pretty hardcore.
You did what had to be done.
Oh, poor Buffrog. But at least Star put out some corn for him, even if she left it out for him like table scraps like he's a frickin' dog. With Buffrog gone, Ludo is at Toffee's mercy. And since Buffrog isn't around to act as his conscience, things will be way, way, way worse. If Marco grows a beard, Ludo for once actually objects to stealing Star's wand just because he knows Star and how she acts. But Toffee is a master manipulator.
It's just, the wand's never been unattended before.
Fine.
I mean, where does it go when Star sleeps? Critical thinking is dead, isn't it? Like, I'm surprised that wasn't an episode, but then again, I guess we did have sleep spells, but that wasn't a Ludo episode. And on top of that, we also see that Ludo's minions were looking to him for guidance, and Ludo can't look weak in front of them. Oh yeah, I should have mentioned. Because Marco grew a giant beard, hence the episode's title, Star's wand got lost in the tangles of his hair, which is why the wand is unattended, to quote Toffee. But again, like we see, Ludo does not treat his minions with kindness, and he doesn't even have Buffrog around anymore to help keep them in line and inspire hope. Of course, Ludo was about to get the wand until the episode causes him to have a flashback to his childhood where he spent his birthday getting tickle tortured.
We've got someone who wants to wish you a very giggly birthday, Ludo. Here comes the tickle monster.
Laugh all you want, viewers, but tickle torture is actually pretty hostile, and people can die from laughing too much. Thank goodness Ludo did not spend his birthday on the island of perpetual tickling, but considering the eventual reveal of Ludo's childhood, honestly it just seems weird watching this part. Like, I'm surprised his parents even remembered his birthday at all, let alone knew him well enough to plan in advance and throw a party. Admittedly though, I feel like we're missing something here. More of a nitpick, although I do want to comment on it. In Toffee's previous appearances, they always foreshadowed earlier in the episode how he would betray Ludo and the soldiers. Like how Buffrog brought up the idea that Toffee wants to replace him, which eventually ends up happening. But here, it just seems odd how he knew Ludo's deepest, darkest secret well enough to use it to his advantage. Like, I don't doubt Ludo probably told him in confidence off screen, or he figured it out from hearsay amongst the army, but I do wish it was foreshadowed a tad better. It's like we're missing a scene or something. Like, honestly, I would not be surprised if the opening scene was the whole tickle torture thing, and then we were supposed to get Marco growing the beard, and then the minions coming, and just, Like, Ludo could be like, "Can I tell you a secret, Toffee? I'm scared of the tickle monster." Or to help establish a rapport with the minions, Toffee could make small talk until one of them spills the secret. At the same time, maybe you can argue that Toffee didn't know and just used the situation to his advantage. It just feels like there was a scene missing or something. But yes, they fail, and Ludo goes back to harshly berate everybody who isn't Toffee rather than take responsibility for his own actions, because I feel like a good leader should admit when they make mistakes. It shows they're human after all, and it means their troops will better respect them. Toffee makes the soldiers realize that Ludo is a very piss-poor leader, and they should get rid of him if they actually want a chance of succeeding in stealing the wand.
Let me ask you a question. What kind of leader throws you into a pit of hair, makes you do all the work, and shows you no appreciation for your sacrifice?
And the sad part is, while Toffee is only doing this to get revenge on Star, everything he says is true. Ludo is a terrible leader, he's a selfish man, he doesn't respect them as people, he just views them as tools, and he got rid of his best henchman because he was told to, when a good leader would tell Toffee not to talk bad about his own comrade, since he's still loyal to the cause. Of course, when Toffee suggests a democratic vote, which is something Ludo probably never did with his soldiers, considering this is a monarchy, you know, like also giving them a voice, they all overwhelmingly choose Toffee and his cool daddy vibes. Wow, when I thought Kanger was hot. But Ludo proves Toffee's point 100%.
You guys belong to me! Three-eyed potato baby, I am like a father to you. Beard dear, I took you in off the streets.
Now, what he's saying is true. They should be respecting him as a leader. But just because you're a leader, unfortunately, doesn't mean you deserve respect. You have to earn it, and probably way more in this case, considering your position. Like, it's not what Ludo thinks. Just being given the title isn't enough. And Ludo hasn't done anything to cultivate it because of that. Remember, he freely bullies them, he puts them down, he grounds them like they're 5, etc. Really, Ludo and Toffee and arguably Buffrog remind me of a lot of bosses I've worked for, where you might like the boss as a person, but you hate how they run things, and you only keep working for them because of other people, like your co-workers, or maybe one of their underlings, or whatever. Like, I don't think any of those monsters followed Ludo because of Ludo. They might have believed in his mission of taking the wand because they spent their whole lives getting oppressed by the butterflies, but even if they don't want to admit it, they never actually liked Ludo as a boss or as a leader. They only stayed for each other, or for somebody like Buffrog. Again, Ludo might have given them room and board, but at what cost? Is getting berated day after day for mistakes you probably didn't even make better than living in a swamp? As a monster, is it really better than getting struck by King Butterfly every day? I mean, when we see Buffrog and Puddle Defender, he was pretty content despite what Ludo says, and despite the fact his house is a mess covered in slugs. And I'm a big believer in the idea that even if you might not be happy in a bad situation, especially one you can't change or where you can't change at the moment, you can always find contentment in your circumstances, which Ludo hasn't done. As a result, Ludo gets kicked out of his own castle. And yes, as we learn in Season 2, that really is his castle.
Well, we don't say that name in this house anymore. Not since he and his goons took over our castle and changed the locks when we were on vacation.
We'll get to you when we get to you, Mommy Ludo, in a few dozen pages. Until then, Ludo is stuck living outside, and it sucks to live outside, I hear, unless you're Lumpy Space Princess, and she's nowhere around. Now, Ludo has to kiss Buffrog. Kitty, don't you mean kiss up to Buffrog? I know what I said. He tries to bribe Buffrog, or at least offer an apology, but I feel, outside of singing, it starts with sorry. You need to properly articulate what you did wrong, why you did it, and why you want to seek forgiveness, which, to be fair, the other party is not obligated to give you. Here, Ludo acts rude to Buffrog even before he gets to the apology stage.
Why you bother knocking when you just walked through my living room?
I'm sorry.
Go away.
Not a good look, dude. Heck, for all of Ludo's quote-unquote respect towards Buffrog, he still doesn't treat him like an equal. He doesn't even know his own name, despite the fact he's worked for him for years.
Is it Chad?
My name is Yevgeny Bogoyabov.
Oh, so you're foreign.
You're one to talk, Kappa. Although, yeah, I do this too. I'm terrible with names. Pronouns, I'm not trying to brag, I'm way better with, but only because I have to constantly use them, so I just get used to them quicker. But Ludo tries to, in his own words,
At least let me buy back your friendship.
not helping your case, Ludo. But he does it by giving Buffrog a bag of tadpoles for him to adopt as a daddy, which we know Buffrog does massively appreciate, but even he says in this episode,
Tadpoles? Ugh.
Tadpole.
but at the same time, I also think this is a pretty crappy gift. Like, why would Buffrog, feel obligated to accept that? He's already living in horrible conditions. He can barely take care of himself. And if you can't take care of yourself, how are you going to take care of another being that's dependent on you for food and survival? Let alone, the number he has. That's at least a dozen, if not 2 dozen. And also, not even helping is how Ludo doesn't even feel some kind of pride for what he's done, I guess you can say, from helping someone. Since it does feel good to do good. He's just like, nah, screw you, I don't need you anymore and your Buffrog buff stuff. I got Star.
The plan was I buy your friendship with gifts because we're friends. And in return, you kicked Toffee, but then Star showed up and I don't need you anymore, you big old meatball.
Well, real good move, dude. Oh yeah, Toffee, just for reference, kidnapped Marco, and since Star isn't in the loop, she doesn't know about the whole quote-unquote transfer of power.
Where's Marco?
I don't even know who that is.
Wow. is Ludo me since I'm horrible with names and have cosplayer facial blindness? Also, we see that Ludo has no clue how this place works, even if he grew up in it. Ludo, I think Star is a bit better at this than you, I hate to break it to you. Heck, even Buffrog points out how it's better to not listen to Ludo.
It is no longer his castle.
He's right. It's Toffee's castle now.
Toffee?
Plus, you guys did have that mini bonding moment in Munipendence Day. Now, how many bonding moments did Star have with Ludo up to this point? I count 0. So, 0. Heck, Ludo has such a one-track mind that the only thing he can think of is stealing the wand, even when he probably shouldn't at the moment, which leads to him getting eaten by one of his minions.
Do you think I'm like Ludo?
Wow, how's that for the circle of life, Ludo? When we die, our bodies become the grass, and the antelope eat the grass, or something monster-related, I don't know. But you guys know by now how it goes. The whispering spell blows up the castle, even if it didn't blow up the realm of magic, and Ludo survives, oddly enough.
Where is my castle?
It's gone.
Ew, gross. Ludo learns his castle is destroyed and swears revenge against Star, which admittedly I do kinda get. But Star just opens up another portal and throws him right in.
And now, my mortal enemy! This day, I vow... Huh?
Now it's time for phase 2. Ludo is gone, but for how long? Let's say maybe for like 2 episodes. Really, how long was it gonna be? He and River share a voice actor. You know, I haven't made a video on River yet, but just for context for later, Star's wand is destroyed by the whispering spell and cleaved, meaning there's now 2 pieces. And while Star retrieves one of the pieces, well, the other is left somewhere for someone else to find. But yes, part 2, time for Ludo in the wild. Okay, I'm gonna be honest, not really the biggest fan of this episode. I don't think it's bad or anything, I'm just a bigger fan of dialogue-heavy episodes. Episodes with little to no talking aren't really my cup of tea, even if I do appreciate them. But at this stage, well, Ludo has little. Like, he has basically nothing. He lost his castle, he lost his army, he lost his family, he lost his respect, he lost his only chance of getting the wand, and he even lost his clothes. He is nothing! So where else is he supposed to go from here? Well, he is to build himself back up, that way he can be torn down again. And I think this is a good chance to say, we should start to talk about Ludo's backstory. Not all of it, just some of it. Contrary to what you might think, Ludo actually grew up super wealthy, kind of. See, Ludo is an Avarius, meaning he hails from what I guess you can call the monster royal family. Star's ancestor, Szanto the Eager, believed that monsters were living in horrible conditions as their own fault because they couldn't take care of themselves. Wow, what a B-word. And to fix that, they needed better leadership. Yeah, nobody liked her. Which led to a mock election where Ludo's great-grandmother, Pema Avarius, and her husband Pseudo, as in S-U-D-O, were elected. But this did little to help, and the Avariuses eventually lost their wealth and presumably their status several generations later through a series of bad investments in the corrupt scratch and sniff trade. Is that like a drug, considering Dennis?
And nothing interrupted me and my stickers. Good old scratch and sniff.
But they still had their castle, and to somebody like Queen Moon, they were one of the good ones. So Ludo, in a way, did grow up wealthy, or wealthy compared to most monsters. I think what's interesting is, it's probably the first time he's ever had to actually fight for himself just to survive. Ooh, maybe he can get a receptionist job at the immediate murder professionals. He could use a little money coming in, right? But Ludo, much like me, is very unsuited to living outdoors or fending for himself.
My ship! Can I please?
Several months pass, and Ludo grows a Tyrion Lannister-type beard, which I kind of like. Albeit, y'all know me. Y'all know I have a thing for scruffs, so I am equally biased. Ludo also manages to subjugate a spider and a bird. Appropriately named Spider and Bird, how clever. And I like how he is able to take care of Spider. He gets smart enough to set a trap for it using a bag of chips he wanted to eat, and then he attacks it when it lets its guard down. Good strategy. He also realizes he can use the chips to get the spider to do what he wants, which I also appreciate. But yes, Spider is now Ludo's first newest minion, and I think Ludo learned from his failures in Season 1, since while he does establish a master-servant type dynamic between him and Spider, well, he does treat it well, or as well as he can for somebody like him, like using the food that they catch together as positive reinforcement.
That's enough. Go get the scraps later.
Whereas if this were the monsters, he'd be like, "Oh, you want some? No, that's not for you. I'm the leader and it's all mine." Weirdly, he also reminds me of King Julian, albeit without, like, having more and Maurice. He's able to use the spider to subjugate the bird that wouldn't feed him earlier. Oh, and he also develops a new sense of fashion in the form of wearing a chip bag.
It's cold out there! I'm wearing a chip bag for corn's sake!
Okay, I have questions about him in, like, the bathroom. Like, that thing must smell awful. How would a turtle bird do that, though? Like, use the bathroom? I mean, I hope he was able to fashion underwear. But Ludo is led away by a hallucination of Star, although considering the circumstances, I think it might have also been rooted in magic, and he discovers, well, he never actually left Muni, and Star left something behind.
I'm on Muni.
Wow, imagine being stuck there for like 90 days. Like just living in your backyard for 90 days without realizing it. That's how long SpongeBob was in prison for that one time. But okay, Ludo now has a wand and he has minions. He can take over Muni, right? Well, first he has to learn how to harness the wand's power. And he does it in the episode Wand to Wand. Which I'll be honestly guys, I remember next to nothing about this episode. Like it's weird, I have like zero memory of it. I didn't even realize it was a thing until I started writing the script. But let's see. Ludo and his minions go to a bar to partake in some porridge, but instead he's given mud. The audacity! So he tries to unleash a can of whoop-ass on them, but nothing happens.
Face melting sentry!
Ah, shucks, if only he had a competent tutor who was also billions of years old and sounded like Captain Flarty from Bob's Burgers. As if. But Ludo is confused.
Yeah, anyway, I don't know, maybe it's just the baby rattle. What are you doing?
He has no idea how right he is. Ludo finds that the wand is able to work if the minions bite the crystal part of it, and he taps into his anger. And from further study, yeah, he discovers that it works if he taps into his anger. I should have led with that. Which, considering how much he's lost, well, he's got a lot of. So he's able to subjugate the rats into a suitable army and also get some porridge out of the deal. And also some corn, as Ludo is also able to use the rats to retrieve food for him. Ew. Why don't you have them make you a Sunday gravy and some ratatouille while you're at it, Josie Grossi? But in By the Book, Ludo still struggles with his wand. If only there was a... Okay, this is getting old. But as he learns, the wand talks. Ludo, I think you're starting to lose it. Being out in the wilderness for 90 days with only like 2 animals didn't really help your sanity, sweetie. However, the wand encourages him to go after Star and steal her knowledge. And so he does. And in a nice dose of character development, he actually remembers Marco's name. Whereas in Storm to Castle, he only remembered him by his nickname of Karate Boy. I think it's a sign he's gotten a bit more competent, like he knows the enemy a bit better. So kudos. Ludo tries to kidnap Star and make her go with him so she can help train him. But when Star obviously refuses, he gets dangerous. And because he isn't used to using the wand in controlled circumstances, well, this actually makes him a pretty dangerous foe. In the process, he does learn that Star has a book with a tutor who can show her how to do magic.
There's a book.
Which makes me wonder how Ludo did not know that, considering Song Day implies that all of Muni knows about the spellbook and knows about Glossaric and knows about what he does. So is it a sign that Ludo is just so single-track minded that he never even considered the possibility? Because honestly, I can see that. But after Buffrog rejects him and his services, he puts a new plan into action. Oh my god, I can't pronounce this. Bon the birthday clown.
Ooh, that explosion did a real number on your face.
Surprise!
In a pretty competent way, he distracts Star while his minions steal the book, and Glossaric with him. And since they're quieter than him, they actually succeed. And this means he now owns Glossaric.
At your service, milady.
I'm not lady.
Oh my god, it gives me Jafar and Genie vibes. Like, whether or not Glossaryck likes Star is irrelevant, since he has to work for whoever owns the book. Even when he rejected Star and raided the cave, I still thought he cared about her and was just using tough love. Like, Star, I have to do this, you're on your own, but I got faith in you.
But you'll be fine. Or not. Anyway, your spell is collapsing.
But I need you!
Maybe this is what you need.
But finally, we've gotten to one of my favorite episodes, The Hard Way. Yay, another episode where I relate to Ludo. Oh, come on! Why? What the hell is wrong with me? Ludo has kept Glossaryck locked up like the slave he is. Oh yeah, PGW, since it's important for the rest of the show, Ludo has found an ancient monster temple to sleep in, which he takes refuge as.
Well. How do you like my monster temple? Pretty cool, huh? My wand told me where to find it.
It's also the same one Eclipsa and Globcore used to stay in, and it's the one where Eclipsa stays in Season 4, just FYI. Surprised Ludo never mentions Globcore, but he didn't know there was a spell book despite it apparently being public knowledge, so I'm willing to excuse it. Plus, like he says, the one told him where to go find the temple, so hey.
And I suppose it's just a coincidence that you've taken up shelter in this ancient monster temple.
I'm supposed to know that? This place was empty, so I moved in.
Guess he isn't insane. I mean, is it really insane to talk to yourself, but to also talk to an object at the same time while you do it so you seem less insane? I mean, it worked for Remy and Ratatouille, and it works for me kind of, so yeah. Ludo has his minions torture Glossaryck psychologically to make him confess.
Did you keep him up all night? You haven't fed him, have you? Good! Then he must be about to crack.
Oh god, I would crack. But since Glossaryck was freely able to eat pudding, yeah, this doesn't faze him. I mean, he lives in the book, we actually see his room in the Book of Spells, and as we saw in Page Turner, he can make copies of himself to act as avatars. Your plan was doomed from the beginning, dude. Glossaryck is super jumpy and excitable, and actually totally down with teaching Ludo how to use the book. Because no offense, that's kind of his whole job. Sometimes when you're a teacher, you don't get to choose who you teach. Glossaryck also kind of embodies my philosophy as a teacher. I'm only with you for a short while, but in that time, I hope we can at least make something of ourselves. And at the same time, I do hope I can help you reach your full potential. But that's also up to you. Also, you remember how I said Glossaryck tends to adjust his teaching style per each student? Like with Star, he plays games with her, so she has to work to come to that conclusion. Here, his training is kind of like what he did with Moon, being very direct to Ludo, while also playing a bunch of mind games and adjusting it a little bit by being pretty patient with Ludo and offering a lot of positive encouragement and feedback. Like, oh, you made a mistake? Okay, that's fine. We can always try again, and we can keep trying.
I listen to my wand, but it never listens to me.
Look, kid, it's your first try. Don't worry about it. We'll just try again. Relax.
But yeah, I do like how, in a way, he still plays mind games with Ludo. Like when Ludo thinks it'll be hard to study, he basically does this whole athletic training montage with the book, only for Glossaryck to reveal that they could have just started at any time, he was just going along with it for Ludo's sake.
Are you kidding me? What was all of this?
Oh, this? Well, I was only doing that because you said you wanted it to be really hard.
I don't know what I want!
I have a feeling if I had the spell book, I would probably be like Ludo. Wait, is that a bad thing? Crap. I've never expected to relate to Ludo until I wrote this video, even if we are both super short and have weirdo shrill voices. Also, since I don't know a better way to shoehorn in this joke...
Stroke.
Ludo, stop making fun of Peter. We also see the main thing holding Ludo back is he's much too literal. For instance, he wants to learn how to do Narwhal Blast like Star, but because he requested to learn what's in the book, Glossaryck tells him that because Star never wrote it down, he can't quite teach him it.
She just used her imagination for most things.
Ooh, what's an imagination?
Okay.
The thing I use to dissociate with when my life gets to be too much, which is usually always lately. I mean, a valuable skill you'll need if you ever want to become a creative. Also, I should bring up something else, which I've been doing a lot lately. Earlier in this season, we got the episode Baby, where Star gets evaluated by the titular character, and her main magic test is to bring her an apple with magic, which she can't do because, hey, this is Star.
No, I mean, bring me that apple, please. With magic.
Oh, right. No, of course. Star.
Here, we learn that the spell Baby likely wanted Star to do was Levitato, which was invented by Crescenta the Eager, and allows you to telekinetically control objects using the wand like a baton.
Now when you're ready, I want you to bring me that apple.
What apple?
That one.
However, because Star tends to work on the fly, she doesn't know basic everyday magic. She only really knows how to defend herself. Whereas Ludo, Levitato is the only spell he really truly learns, aka the most basic because he's the one who followed the instructions. And why does he only really learn the one spell? Well, because he doesn't want Glossaryck to be his teacher. He wants him to be his daddy. Yes, just like that. He wants him to be his daddy's substitute, and also his friend at the same time. See, as Ludo explains, he has a crybaby backstory himself. I mean, I already gave hints to it, but this is where it mainly comes in.
You know what my dad taught me about making my way in the world? Zip! I was 1 egg out of 50. Everything I've learned, I had to learn dirty.
He has a massive insecurity complex because he was the runt of his family. He couldn't even fit into his family portrait. Also, remember, Shazdakan was a second-born son, and he would have received no place in the Spider-Bite court because of it. Imagine Ludo. Imagine how lost he would be. And as a result, both because of his short size and his insecurity, this creates a weird inferiority complex. Since he has a desperate need to prove himself and show he can make something or lead somebody, since he was never allowed to do any of that growing up. He was just ignored or put down. But while he does have noble goals, he's often held back by himself, especially his own selfishness, because unlike most monsters, he did grow up privileged somewhat. Especially here. All he did, I hate to break it to you, was learn one spell, and learn to channel himself into the wand, since he realized that his own pride and love was a better way to help himself over his anger. And yes, it's impressive, especially for a monster, and especially for somebody who isn't even a butterfly, but unfortunately, dude, it's still a super basic spell, implied to be the most basic spell. And like Glossaryck said, his only real skill was just following the directions.
Am I better than Star?
Well, I guess you're better at following the spell book.
Are you proud of me?
Yeah.
AKA what a normal student typically does. If he really wanted to impress Glossaryck, which I doubt he would, but you know what I mean. Well, he should try to craft his own spells, or try to find his own method, since then he'd be like the other queens in the book and finally prove his mark. Or he could just not be so desperate. Since as we know from the Book of Spells, the desperate queens were Glossaryck's least favorite, especially Solaria and Crescenta. With Solaria, he never got involved in her conflicts, especially her total annihilation spell, because he, quote, doesn't like politics. Whereas with Crescenta, aka the one who wrote the Levitato spell, he found her too overbearing for his liking, and preferred her sister, who was implied to have depression and self-worth issues. But Selena, he did like how adorably shy she was, while with Comet, she was his favorite because she left him food. Oh yeah, sorry Ludo, you aren't the favorite. Comet is. And honestly, yeah, speaking as an educator, we don't have favorites. That's not me being like, oh, I love all of you equally. Yeah, we really don't have favorites. I mean, we have kids we prefer, but not like overall. Usually it's only in the moment. There's a total difference. And I think what makes it worse is, again, how he gets so attached to Glossaryck so quickly. Like, he only knew him for less than a day. And on top of that, he tried to turn him into a father, when, spoiler alert, Glossaryck already has kids and he hates them more than you'll ever know. Doesn't matter if they actually like him or not, considering Ronaldo. Although it does lead to one of my all-time favorite Star Versus moments.
And say, good night, my darling.
Are you kidding me? Good night.
My darling.
My darling.
I wish somebody made a TikTok of that so I can steal the audio and make a TikTok myself. Please, I ask very little of you guys, definitely. Ludo tells his wand about the fun he's been having with Glossaryck, but the wand tells him that Glossaryck is a lying liar. After all, there's a chapter in the book that Glossaryck hasn't shown Ludo as of yet, which now that I think about it, I was gonna cite as a flaw, but you know what, I changed my mind on this. I was gonna argue that Glossaryck barely even showed him a chapter to begin with, like at most just a quick page. The page being the one with Levitato avocado. Ludo basically saw 1% of the book, and that's just me being generous. He probably didn't even see that much. But again, there goes Toffee, I mean the one, taking advantage of his insecurity, and Ludo not thinking critically enough to see past it. Glazeric does confirm that there is a chapter that Star has seen that he didn't. However, he neglects to mention precisely why. Like that Star just wanted to see all the cool spells, or that Star herself hasn't really read most of the book of spells outside of one chapter herself, that being Skywind's chapter.
Want to see it, you want to see. Well, I don't know. It's really advanced. Dark stuff.
Did you show it to Star?
However, I think he's doing this because he's just tired of Ludo in general, and he probably thinks like, if Ludo gets corrupted by dark magic, I can use a break. I'll just wait a day before I fix him. I mean, he is like, oh, it contained you, right? But that's about it. He never goes into any of the specifics because Ludo didn't ask. He doesn't mention anything about Eclipse or whatever, or say why it could. Maybe you can argue that would just make Ludo want to learn it more, like reverse psychology, but no. And honestly, he could have just convinced Ludo it was any other chapter. Like he could have said like, well, Star read Skywind's chapter because yes, according to the Book of Spells, that was the only chapter that Star read from beginning to end without skimming. Unless maybe like the one would tell him like, oh yeah, he's still lying to you or something, so hey, maybe best to rip the band-aid off now. This Jew just really wanted a break. Like he hated Ludo that much that he was willing to let his soul get corrupted by dark magic. So he lets Ludo look at the chapter and...
I thought there'd be more
Two things. One, I've always wondered why only certain people get corrupted, like how Ludo looks at the chapter and he gets corrupted, or Marco gets corrupted, but Star, like, nothing happens, but that's just me. But hey, he and Star are more alike than they seem, but I'll get there when we get to face the music. However, the darkness allows Toffee to take over Ludo. Yay, we're back! For like 5 seconds, because much like an alcoholic father, Toffee comes and goes as he pleases.
You'll never get him on your side.
But I don't have a side.
You don't, do you?
I call bull! You have to serve whoever holds the book, yes. And I know you don't mean you don't have a side, yes. But you do have a side. And this isn't me saying like, oh, neutrality is still a decision or still a side. You lying puddle-filled liar. You have a side. That's the whole point of you in the show. You just keep your cards close to your chest. I will not listen to your lies. But yes, Face the Music is the episode I really wanted to get to. Earlier in the season, Star told Moon that she lost the book and could not get it back. And with the book also meant Glazeric. And Moon promised to help her and keep it a secret from the Magic High Commission in the meantime. This episode, as the penultimate Season 2 episode, finally has her deliver on that promise, as she tries to keep it a secret by going herself, as she goes to visit Ludo's parents in the Forest of Certain Death, aka Lord Ludo Avarius and his wife Lady Avarius.
What is it?
Hello, Lord Brudo.
Queen Moon.
And here we see that Ludo wasn't exaggerating, as his parents were just as bad as he claimed, and they kind of remind me of a few families I knew growing up. For instance, we meet his mother, and she has one eye closed most of the time, and it's kind of bruised. Some people have said it's a lazy eye because she can occasionally open it, but that could honestly be a sign that her husband abuses her, or he's done it so much that her eye doesn't open anymore. Just saying, any man who is willing to harm a child would harm his wife. And he can very easily be metaphorical for, say, an alcoholic father, especially considering how he walks around the house with his robe like wide open. Oh, but when I do it, it's indecent exposure. He even has no problem being rude to his wife in front of Moon.
My dear, we have company. You may want to get dressed.
Plus, he was also super rude to Moon when she arrived.
You coming in or what?
You're blocking the door.
I'll move. Jeez.
And as we later learn, they're quite abusive to most, if not all, of their children, which isn't a stretch considering what she does here with her baby when Moon shows up.
Oh, Queen Moon! To what do we owe the, honor.
Again, they remind me of a lot of families I knew growing up. Like, they're all polite to you and junk, and the second you leave, they go right back to being like the family from As I Lay Dying. I should talk to somebody. I guess you guys count. Also, since I don't know a good place to plug this in, I like how this is the first episode to point out that Moon has a weird kind of mental gymnastics. Like, they kind of implied it in Page Turner, but we actually see it here, where she hates all monsters, but Ludo is a monster. But because the Avarius family are her allies, she ignores it. She's quite polite to them, she treats them like equals, she even mentions to River that she's been to that house before, implying they're well acquainted. At one point, she even pats Ludo's mom in the shoulder to console her.
There. We can't always control the path our children choose to take.
Something she'd probably never do to any other monster but them. But yeah, like I said way back when, Ludo was abused all his life by his parents. Which yes, I know later we learn that Ludo's parents are abusive to all their kids. I just feel like considering his dad's comments, Ludo got the brunt of it.
We were extra hard on him to toughen him up. Was he grateful? No. Instead, he destroyed our ancestral home.
Which, no, dude. This goes out to all you guys. Being extra hard on a kid to toughen them up does not toughen a kid up. It just makes their problems worse and ensures they have problems when they become adults. It gives them more problems, especially since they're too young to know where this is coming from. All it does is make it seem like they're being unloved, and you hate them more. And abusing one kid more than the others isn't love, I hate to break it to you, it's just abuse. You're basically why Ludo is the way he is, even if yes, his many mistakes are on him. Heck, I'll even go a step further and say that considering metaphors and how much this episode is loaded with them, Ludo is basically a metaphor for a child born with a disability. In this instance, let's say a form of dwarfism, especially considering his height and because Starverses likes its parallels with Game of Thrones. So yeah, I guess we can add ableism to their list of crimes. In the real world, Ludo's parents would basically be the equivalent of parent abusing a disabled child for being born disabled, not doing anything to accommodate him, even the bare minimum of, say, finding a way for him to fit in their family portrait, like maybe giving him a step stool or crouching for instance, and not celebrating his difference or saying it's a part of him or whatever. But I feel like, in a way, they got karma for it. Remember, the Avariuses had nothing but their castle, and Ludo retaliated by stealing it and using his family's name to help jumpstart an army. An army who likely followed him solely because of his name, since Toffee and the Septarians were long gone. Now they're forced to live in a rundown old shack with very little but the clothes on their backs. Hey, that rhymes. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if the crowns his parents wear is what they wore when they came home and found out Ludo stole their castle. But Ludo's parents tell Moon they have no idea where he is, and Moon leaves, while being followed by Ludo's little brother who is of average height, Dennis.